My name is Hassan Sorrells, and this is the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast, Shorts. There's no co-host on these Shorts episodes. We have extended the time on these shorter episodes from 5 to 6 minutes to 15 to 20 minutes for this season. This is so that these shorts can serve as introductory episodes released ahead of our weekly, longer form episodes. But don't worry, I will still let you know my observations, ideas, thoughts, or rants about the literature, philosophy, psychology, and even the theology of leadership, particularly as we prepare for the restoration of leadership and leadership principles during the next historical high in America. Why these episodes? Well, because listening to me talk about leadership for now around 15 to 20 minutes is still better than reading and trying to understand yet another business book. Even that business book that you bought with that famous person's name as the author, but you haven't applied any of the principles from that book to your leadership practices. At least not yet. When trends, moments, and eras are at an end, if you're paying attention, you can almost feel it. If you're a person who is perpetually online all of the time, it feels as if the chaos of humanity will never end. The internet and social media represent a yawning abyss of existential crises, lurching unpredictably from one pole of the continuum of reality to the next. Of course, if you are exposed to this constantly, without a break, the only thing to do is to numb yourself with hedonistic pleasures as a defense against madness. However, there are a whole lot of events that still drive the cycles of trends, moments, and eras that do not occur online and are totally missed in the online space. These events, these trends, these things represent small pushbacks, minor rebellions against the current trends, the current online trends anyway, seeking to spill out from online spaces and impose themselves on the larger physical world. But the physical world still resists much of this encroachment, primarily because the physical world operates at the level of including everything, from atoms and molecules to the largest forms, and demanding, matter of fact, insisting that they conform to a particular hierarchy. What does this have to do with leadership? Well, leadership is one of those areas that operates at all levels of reality, and leadership lives at the intersection of the physical world and the psychological world. It also resists encroachment of behaviors from spaces that are subordinate to it. But because leadership is psychological, spiritual, and emotional first, and material and reductionist second, it advances only in the container of the physical world of people in relationship with, other people. And now we are entering a great era where the psychological hobbling of creeping existentialism is being thrown off, and a new era and a new hierarchy of hope is ready to be born. Three unlikely authors' works meet as we exit the intersection of the chic pose of existential dread, the carefully cultured cynicism of an overly educated and wealthy elite, and the nihilism of those who have stared too long into the abyss of human nature and now cannot extricate themselves from it. The writing of John Steinbeck, Vladimir Nabokov, and Fyodor Dostoevsky, East of Eden, Invitation to a Beheading, and Notes from Underground, this month serve as doors into a set of ideas of what a turn away from Gnostic certainty, materialistic ego, and existential dread might potentially look like in the 21st century. We're going to explore these books because they are important to understand how we as leaders, and as followers, quite frankly, can recapture the spirit of those who have come before us in leadership and bring that spirit forward, reconstitute it, and relaunch it for the times we are about to enter. You know, the times I keep insisting on this show are about to occur, the times of national rebuilding. There's a quote here that may be helpful for us thinking about this in some sort of meaningful way, and I want to bring this forward to you from an ancient text. Quote, "And Adam knew Eve his wife, and she conceived and bare Cain, and said, I have gotten a man from the Lord. And she again bare his brother Abel. And Abel was a keeper of sheep, but Cain was a tiller of the ground. And in the process of time it came to pass that Cain brought the first fruit of the ground, an offering unto the Lord. And Abel he also brought of the firstlings of his flock, and of the fat thereof. And the Lord had respect unto Abel, and to his offering, but unto Cain and to his offering he had not respect. And Cain was very wroth, and his countenance fell. And the Lord said unto Cain, Why art thou wroth? And why is thy countenance fallen? If thou doest well, shalt thou not be accepted? And if thou doest not well, sin lieth at the door. And unto thee shall be his desire, and thou shalt rule over him." Genesis 4, 1-7, King James Version. What does this mean? Particularly, what does this mean in light of Steinbeck, Nabokov, and Dostoevsky? Can we really, quote-unquote, rule over our sins, or do our sins inevitably and indubitably, quote-unquote, rule over us? Are we able to escape the land of Nod, a place east of Eden, and avoid the fall into the land of the absurd? Are we as leaders able to confront the things that live deep in our hearts, underground, and find neither tragedy nor determinism, but instead find hope? And to whom or to what do we need to appeal in order to make all of that happen? We know in the 21st century that believing in nothing has failed. We can see the evidence of that all around us. We also know that we are at the beginning of a great experiment that will consume the human mind and the human will to work for the remainder of this century. And that is the great experiment in building artificial life as if we were engineering a car or bridge or boat. At the intersection of the end of nihilism and the repudiation of reductionism lies the only tool the technologists would have us use to build, lead, and engineer a new world. Our own individual egos. This is the warning. The Timshol in that selection from the book of Genesis can be roughly translated into the words, thou mayest, as in, and if thou dost not well, sin lieth at the door, and unto thee shall be his desire, and thou mayest rule over him. A Timshol indicates that at the end of everything, at the end of all of our philosophical noodling, is still, at the end of the day, the thing the technologists hate to acknowledge, our free will. At the close of the Enlightenment project, and at the opening of a new human-driven attempt to rebuild the Tower of Babel to the sky that will only offend mere transcendence, we still have the option, the free will, to accept the authority of sin over ourselves and our lives, or we have the option to accept the authority of an opposing entity over our lives and our hearts, an entity that would guide us into a more ethical and more structured form of leadership. The opposite of pride is always humility. And at this moment, at this era, at this time, let us choose to be ruled by the highest transcendent reality and build whatever it is we're going to build in that light. And well, that's it for me. Are you ready to elevate your leadership journey through exploring the wisdom of the ages? Subscribe to the Leadership Lessons from the Great Books podcast on all major podcast platforms, including Apple iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube Music. You can also find us everywhere else podcasts are available. If you find value in our episodes, please leave a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, and of course, YouTube. We need those reviews to grow, and it is truly the easiest way to help other leaders and lovers of literature discover this show. And thank you for your support.